Congress, but he has quite the race on his hands, Stephanie. What are you picking up tonight?
He definitely does, Rick, and you can see that the room is starting to fill up here with Rick Saccone supporters. We've spoken to a lot of them. Some of them are excited, some of them are nervous, but they are all fully aware that there is a lot of attention on this race. My Uber driver was talking about it, folks at the hotel. This is a big deal. This means a lot for this district, but I can tell you that tonight's outcome will rely heavily on voter turnout, and the weather out here has been dicey today. 1 minute the sun is out, another minute there are blizzard-like conditions. That is not an exaggeration. It's been crazy. So it'll be interesting to see what the voter turnout is for today. But one thing I can tell you from speaking to voters across this area is that we shouldn't group them into this devout Republican, just President Trump supporter category. A lot of them have the same issues that both candidates are addressing, both Conor and Rick Saccone. They're interested in job creation, the union strength, and protecting entitlement programs, the Penguins, the Steelers, the Pirates as well. But they know that there isn't just one way to achieve all of those goals, to address all of those issues, and that's probably why this race is so close. Rick?
Yeah, Stephanie, I am interested in the mood over there because so many people have talked about this. It's the big chance for Democrats. Republicans just had Donald Trump in the district a couple of days ago. They're trying to get energized. Their candidate, I haven't really seen anything like it. We've got a lot of people on the Republican side saying our candidate just isn't that good.
Right. Well, the mood here is, I mean, people were just let in to the country club here, so they're still excited. They just sang the national anthem up front. They're talking amongst themselves, but like I said, it's been a mix. There's definitely been a mix of folks that are excited, that are nervous about tonight's outcome. They know that this is a really big deal and could really, as you said, could really set the stage for the midterm elections later on this year.
All right, Stephanie, we're going to check back with you throughout the night. Keep up the good work and the reporting over there in the crowd across town. I'll tell you, Arlette, right here, we're seeing that people just begin to filter in. Conor has tapped into something on the Democratic side. The Democratic Party, it's interesting. This district actually has a voter registration advantage for Democrats. You'd never know that from the numbers. They vote Republican, Republican, Republican.
That's right, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this race turns out, particularly because Conor has really run a very local campaign. He hasn't been drawing on national politicians, many of them, to come in. We saw Vice President Joe Biden with him here last week, but really he's been trying to keep this focused on the district, and he's not even mentioning Donald Trump when he's out on the campaign trail. So a lot of people are trying to make this a referendum of Donald Trump when the candidate himself is really not trying to mention him at all.
All right, Zachary Keish, if you're with us, I'd love to get a little download of what's going on so far. I know you've been talking to a lot of people around the district so far today. Any sense of where things stand based on your conversations?
Well, we talked to folks from both sides of the aisle today, went to a local diner today and kind of got a sense of what their thoughts and feelings are. We're with Lamb supporters now. You're seeing we're starting to fill up a little bit here as the tension starts to build a little bit. I talked to one gentleman here just a couple of minutes ago, and he told me it's not over until it's over. There's certainly a lot of optimism, but also a sense that this thing might be too early to call. The gentleman that I talked to today earlier at the diner said, you know, this has been a grassroots campaign by Lamb, and a lot of that appeals to folks in this particular district. The fact that Lamb is moderate, right? And in a lot of ways, he kind of exemplifies some of the Blue Dog Democrats from some time ago, right? And it's kind of a cranberry part of Western Pennsylvania, right? And you know, we're going to hear some sound now from one of these gentlemen who talks about kind of the distaste for the amount of money that was spent and kind of how that rubbed folks the wrong way. Let's hear that sound.
We have allowed our government to become so stagnant that it can't do anything. It's a shame. When we talk about money in this little election here, can you imagine the money wasted nationwide on politics? You said what this money in this little area here could go to accomplish if we didn't waste it on this foolishness. Imagine the waste nationwide and what we could do with that money.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it is, and the results don't merit the cost.
I think that's such interesting perspective, Zachary, because I know the voters you're talking to, we're looking at this as a D versus R, this big partisan battle. But for most people, they're not thinking about, am I a Democrat or am I a Republican?
No, and there's a lot of middle ground here. You look at an issue like tariffs. I saw people on both sides of the issue that didn't really find an issue with that. Taxes. Folks like to see money in their 401k. And then this particular issue right here, you talked about the amount of money that's being spent, and it's almost as if this seat is being rented. And they wonder, could this money be spent better on other things?
And it's an amazing amount of money that was spent for essentially renting a district. You're only going to get it for a couple of months. Zachary, we'll check in with you throughout the night. We'll see you around.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to get over to Catherine Falders, who's back in our D.C. bureau, taking a temperature out on social. What's the buzz so far? What are you hearing, Catherine?
Hey, Rick and Arla. Yeah, it's still early here. A lot of reactions still coming in out of the polls, of course. But we've been tracking this all day. We've been putting out calls to folks who have been getting back to us about the issues that they care most about and the candidates and why, really. Before I get into that, though, a couple of statistics from our social media team here. The hashtag PA18, it's generated 413,000 tweets over the last week, but 373,000 of those have come in the last 3 days. And what we're seeing is Conor Lamb's team is more active on Twitter. Some of the top 5 hashtags in PA 18 have come from him. But what we're seeing from Rick Saccone is that they mentioned President Trump a lot. A lot of the responses have been tied to President Trump. And we're seeing a lot of these responses nationalized in a way. The Saccone responses mention President Trump, and Lamb mentions the, quote, blue wave, and a lot of links to Nancy Pelosi there. So I want to take you over to this board where we've been tracking a lot of these reactions, again, coming in throughout the day. So you can see some of these tweets over here that Ali Rogan has been tracking all day. And what we're seeing, first of all, is that, especially with Rick Saccone, a lot of his supporters are bringing up his military record. You see right here from Vlad, he says he voted for Rick Saccone because he is a former Army intel expert on North Korea. He is pro-life, and he will help not obstruct the Trump agenda. And that's become the reality. Of course, using a lot of that language, not obstruct, that the President Trump likes to use when he refers to Democrats. And again, mentioning the Trump agenda here. This is a referendum, at least for some of these tweets that we're seeing on President Trump. A lot of the reason that they are voting, at least on what we're seeing on social media now. And I want to go to the next tweet. Again, I'm heading up the street to vote for Saccone today. I'm not part of a flock of sheep fooled by a lamb, Rick. Now, obviously, that's a reference to Conor Lamb, who Republicans are working hard to tie to Nancy Pelosi. There was an ad that came out that said Conor has a little lamb. So you see that here. A lot of those jokes are coming in. We've been seeing on Facebook and Twitter a lot of links to that. Now, here we look. This is from Daisha. She says, of course, I'm from Washington County. I decided to vote for Conor because I feel like he'll actually do something about health care and actually work with the people who need help. Nothing is changing around here, and it's about time that it does. Plus, I am really hoping that he fulfills. So again, a lot of what we're seeing so far is a focus on these national issues, whether it's North Korea or the military or health care, et cetera. And another one from her, following up to Ali Rogan, who put a call out to her saying his promise on fixing the bridges and roads around here. Another reference to infrastructure, something the president has talked a lot about as well. So so far, we're seeing a lot of this reaction coming in a nationalized way. A lot of these tweets, and our social media folks told us, a lot of these tweets, especially referring to Rick Saccone, mention President Trump in them. So far, we're seeing a lot of that. And I think the North Korea references are important and key here because a lot are saying, we've seen momentum on this front. The president has just agreed to meet with the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. We've seen a lot of links to that meeting and to North Korea and military overall. Here is another one from Lynn. She says she lives in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. She's an African-American female. It's time for change. Mr. Lamb is young and interesting. The blue wave is on. So again, a lot of references to that blue wave, that he's a young and interesting candidate, and frankly another national issue here. So really, Rick and Arlette, these responses are still coming in, and we're monitoring them, and we're asking our viewers to keep sending us responses with the hashtag AskABCNews. But right now, as much as Conor Lamb has also tried to not make this about national politics, we wouldn't be talking really about this race. As you mentioned, it's a small district that we wouldn't know much about. But a lot of these tweets and a lot of the reaction on social media, on Facebook and on Twitter, is related to these bigger issues. And a lot mention President Trump.
Yeah, and it is those national issues that we tend to cover. This race never really should be competitive under maybe normal circumstances. These are not normal circumstances, Arlette.
No, certainly not. President Trump won this district by 20 points. Mitt Romney by 17, John McCain by 11%. Congressman Tim Murphy, who held the seat just before he resigned a few months ago, had held it since 2002 and was always winning by double digits. This is not a seat that Democrats should be competitive in at all.
I want to take this question to Kayleigh McEnany, who's a Republican National Committee spokeswoman, worked for President Trump on the campaign, a pretty prominent spokesperson. Kayleigh, why is this even an issue? Why are we even in the 18th District of Pennsylvania tonight talking about a competitive election? Isn't that a bad sign for Republicans that this is even a race?
I don't think it's a bad sign, and here's why. Conor Lamb has essentially run as a Republican. He's pro-gun. He says he's personally pro-life. He says he's pro-coal. He's pro-tariff. He's anti-Nancy Pelosi. Imagine that, the Democratic candidate who's against Nancy Pelosi, the minority leader. He has made himself into essentially a Republican. So you have a Republican in name and a Republican in truth running against one another.
And you had President Trump here in this district on Saturday. How much of an effect do you think he's actually going to have on a race? And do you think that other Republicans are going to want him campaigning with him come November?
Oh, if Rick Saccone wins tonight, mark my words, this was because of President Trump. It's because of the enthusiasm he brought to this district. As you mentioned, he carried this by 20 points. And our Chairwoman McDaniel, says often and says widely that every candidate should welcome President Trump to their district or their state. He's our secret weapon for the midterms, and we believe, as I said, if Saccone wins tonight, it's because of President Trump.
What do you make of the way that Democrats have mobilized in this? I know the track record in the Trump presidency have been pretty good in special elections, although the big loss in Alabama that I know was a disappointment to your party back in December. But what do you make of the fact that parts of this state, as red as this part of the state has been in the past, can be as excited about a Democratic candidate as they are for Conor Lamb?
Well, they're excited about a Democratic candidate that, as I mentioned, touts a lot of Republican policies. And one thing that we really want to get out there tonight is that this race, we'll see what happens, but we don't think it's emblematic of races across the country for this reason. Conor Lamb did not have a strong challenge from the far left of his party. When you look down at Texas, some of the primaries that have happened there, you have the Bernie Sanders wing fighting the Hillary Clinton wing. Likewise, in California, you see that the Democratic Party won't even endorse Senator Dianne Feinstein. So this element of the far left versus the establishment didn't play out in this district, and that's something that will play out nationwide, and we believe will benefit Republicans.
And Kayleigh, this was a crazy news day, as you know. The president replacing his Secretary of State via Twitter. First thing this morning, he was out visiting the border wall. Are you concerned, is the Republican Party concerned, that this president and the chaos that he seems to invite upon himself and the White House has a spillover effect on your candidates, not just in Pennsylvania 18, but as you try to message around the economy and around taxes, that everything gets blown out of the water when the president tweets something?
Well, Rick, we don't believe that what happened today was chaotic at all. In fact, Chief of Staff John Kelly had told the former Secretary of State that he would be losing his job. This was not a surprise to him. In fact, it had been talked about for some time. And what we see today is putting a Secretary of State in place, Mike Pompeo, that's going to streamline this foreign policy and make this the toughest, firmest negotiating team possible as we go in to meet with North Korea. This is someone who's in line with the president's policies, and it was important to make this change before we entered that crucial meeting.
All right, Kayleigh McEnany, we appreciate you being with us. We'll be watching as the night goes on, and look forward to catching up with you afterward. Thank you, Kayleigh.
Thanks so much, Rick.
All right, we're going to talk to Zachary Keish, who's working the crowd right behind us here at Conor Lamb headquarters in Western Pennsylvania. Zach, what do you got?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. I appreciate it. I'm with Jennifer. She's a local shop steward here. Tell me, why are you out here voting for Lamb tonight?
For a change in Western Pennsylvania.
I mean, on some level, it feels like this is a vote between Lamb or for Donald Trump. Is that fair to say?
Well, yeah. Saccone said that he was Trump before Trump was Trump, so absolutely. It's definitely for a change.
We were just talking just a minute ago. There are some particular issues that are meaningful, important to you as a resident here. You think Lamb can kind of bring it over the finish line for you? What are those issues?
Absolutely. There are a lot of things. I mean, job security is one of them. Creating jobs is another one of them. You have people that have worked hard their entire lives. Securing Social Security is another one. So, I mean, that's something that people have earned, and, people want to take that away from them right now. That's just unfair.
And it seems that the campaign has been a grassroots approach that tends to appeal to not only yourself, but also the folks that you represent?
Absolutely. I mean, we have people canvassing and, phone banking on a daily basis. It's not just, a weekend thing. Everybody's going hard all day long, every day.
Is it fair to say that there are people that voted for Donald Trump during the presidential election that are here in this room tonight voting for Lamb tonight?
Absolutely, yes. There are definitely people who were looking for a difference in the 2016 election who chose Trump and now regret it, which is why they're here supporting Lamb today.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Rick and Arlette, there you have it. Back to you guys.
All right, thank you, Zachary. Yeah, this is an interesting place to be as we sit here in Western Pennsylvania as part of our live coverage tonight. Again, hashtags are PA18 and Ask ABC News. Arlette, we are here in this corner of the state. It is coal country. Mm-hmm. It's steel country. It's union country. It's also Trump country. This part of the state is emblematic of how President Trump won, period, end of story. He won Pennsylvania, he won the industrial Midwest, and he did it by running up the score in places just like this.
And Conor Lamb, if he wants to win tonight, he's going to have to win over a lot of those voters, the white working class voters who went over to Donald Trump during the 2016 election. We know that he has the support of the union groups, something that the previous congressman, Tim Murphy, he had support of the labor movement here in this district. But Conor Lamb is really trying to appeal to the local interest, and also in many ways running as a moderate or almost a conservative Democrat, trying to not only try to win over those Democrats from the affluent suburbs, but also trying to get some of those people who voted for Donald Trump in the last go-around, and then also hoping that maybe some Republicans are going to stay home tonight. And
a really interesting point that we talk about with all of the outside money that poured in here. This is about a lot more than one particular district in one night in Pennsylvania. This is about momentum. This is about the symbolism. This district, oddly enough, won't even exist a year from now. It's gone. It's gone off the map almost certainly because the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is throwing out the entire map. And here you see just a little snapshot of how this district went. Those blue spots, those are other districts. Focus on that southwestern corner, and you see that Trump eked out a little bit of victory right there in Allegheny County. That's Pittsburgh suburbs. But you go a little bit further into the exurbs and into the rural part of the state, further south into coal country, further east into some wealthier exurbs. Trump destroyed Hillary Clinton.
Right.
She had no chance there. 30, 40 points in those districts. Now, Conor Lamb's formula has to be to bring out the Democrats that are there right there in Allegheny County in the Pittsburgh suburbs and hope, frankly, that those Republicans don't show up like they did for Trump elsewhere in the district.
And that's what he's been trying to do this time around, appealing to both Democrats and Republicans. We know that he is running a different campaign than a lot of national Democrats would. He has come out and said he wouldn't vote for Nancy Pelosi as the party leader in the House. He is against new gun control laws. He's even said that he supports President Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum. This is steel country. Those are going over very well here. But he is going to need to, as you said, pull those more Democrats from those suburbs, as well as try to win over some of those Trump voters.
All right, I see right now a guy who stands out in a lot of different crowds. Mayor John Fetterman of Braddock, Pennsylvania. Good to see you.
Hi.
Also a Democratic candidate for lieutenant governor this year. We'll put you right over here so we can get you a set of headphones on so you can hear all our coverage. Mr. Mayor, your hometown is right outside of the boundaries of this district. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I ran statewide for the U.S. Senate, I became very familiar with this area and have a lot of supporters here. So we've spent a lot of time here. So I know that the 18th really, really well.
So we just heard from a Republican Party spokeswoman who said Conor Lamb's running like a Republican. You look at the issues. You look at the issues that he's emphasizing. He's trying to minimize the daylight between himself and President Trump, saying he won't even vote for Nancy Pelosi if he's a House leader. Is that the formula for Democrats to act like Republicans?
One of the key issues that Conor has really latched onto is the support for unions, and that's very much not a Republican issue. In fact, I think the major miscalculation that Saccone has made is really talking about his right to work chops. And I think that's really going to cost them the election. So, and Conor's expressed his own personal opposition to abortion, but respects Roe v. Wade. So I don't think he's running anything like a traditional Republican or anything like that. I think he's running as a Democrat who is definitely navigating a district that was 20%, 20 points for Donald Trump not that long ago. So.
And you saw the president here over the weekend energizing the Republican base. How much do you think, though Conor Lamb has barely mentioned the president when he's been out on the campaign trail, how much do you think this election is about the president?
Well, I mean, of course, Donald Trump is the gorilla in every room in politics conversations these days. Conor, the Democrats picked a really, really great candidate, and the Republicans picked a particularly weak candidate. And that's why they've needed, $10 million in outside money to prop up Rick Saccone, whereas Conor by himself has raised $4 million. So I think definitely Donald Trump, it's a referendum on his leadership, but I think it's also a reflection of the strength that Conor has brought to this race as a candidate that can win in an overwhelmingly red district.
Mr. Mayor, before we let you go, give us the bumper sticker that you take away from tonight. If Conor Lamb wins, or even if he just comes close, what do Democrats nationally need to take away from this race?
I think the thing that they need to take away is that every district needs to be challenged, and that pragmatism has a place in the Democratic Party. I hear from some of my very left friends that it's like, well, he's not for this or not for this. I'm like, well, I'd rather have somebody that'll vote with us 9 out of 10 times as opposed to somebody that'll vote 0 out of 10 times like a Rick Saccone would. And we as a party, can't see pragmatism and having a Democrat like Conor Lamb be seen as some kind of a sellout or a compromising of our party's principles.
All right, Mayor Fetterman from Braddock, Pennsylvania. Hope to see you at a Pirates game soon. Appreciate you being here. Hope we can check in with you as the night goes on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Here, I'll take that.
And as we said, he's running for lieutenant governor right here. Stephanie Ramos, we want to check in with you over at Rick Saccone headquarters. Are people filing in? You're feeling some energy over the Republican side?
Oh, absolutely, Rick. You can see the room is getting pretty filled here. But, speaking to supporters here in this area, both candidates are going to really need every vote they can get. They've poured a lot into these races, a lot of money as well. You guys have kind of touched on that. Millions and millions of dollars. GOP and Trump-aligned groups as well have poured in about at least $10 million to prop up Saccone, but it's still a really tight race. And being here in town, we've seen a lot of the attack ads on TV, on the radio, and it has been nonstop, but still a really close race. And follow me here. We're going to talk to a few supporters who have been sharing with me why they support Saccone, and not just as of recently, but they've been Saccone supporters for decades. So, Becky here, thank you for joining us. So tell us, what brought you out here tonight, and in what issues are you really tied to that you feel as though Saccone will address if he wins?
What brought us out was Rick. We've been supporters for as long as I've lived here, which is 8 years. He's a real person. What he says is what he delivers. He doesn't lie. He doesn't lead you on. If he can't do something, he tells you. If he can do something, he does it. It's probably the thing that endeared me to him most, is that you could believe what he said because his actions matched his words.
And how do you feel about this race? So we're talking about it. Everybody's talking about how close it is. No one expected it to be this close, especially in this district, such a Republican district. Well,
he worked hard to make it a Republican district.
Well, so it's a Republican district now. So what makes you think, why do you think it's such a close race, and why Conor Lamb even has a chance to win this?
People have their own opinions. I mean, I honestly don't know. People like Conor Lamb. People like Rick Saccone. I'm hoping that it comes out in our favor because the United States could use more people like Rick Saccone in Congress.
And what's one issue that you feel personally tied to that you feel Rick Saccone will address if he wins?
He is very much an advocate of the Second Amendment, and I believe very strongly in the Second Amendment. Pretty much his whole platform is what most people around here like. So he's really just going to keep representing us the same way that he did in Harrisburg.
All right, Becky, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy your evening. We're going to keep walking around here. You can see a lot of folks are here. We've seen a lot of red hats, Make America Great Again hats. But we're going to find Dan here, who has been speaking to us this evening about why he supports Rick Saccone. Dan, thanks for speaking with us.
Sure,
good. So tell us what brought you out.
Well, I've known Rick for about 15 years now. My wife actually helped organize the event tonight. Totally support Rick. And just a great family man, just a great guy, good morals. I've known this family forever. And so it's just, you have to be here to support Rick. So
we were speaking with Becky just a little while ago, and she talked about the issue that she's most tied to, the Second Amendment. She feels as though Saccone will really address that if he were to win. What's something that you're personally tied to? What issue drives you to Saccone and his beliefs?
Trump's new tax savings plan. I mean, Rick will support it. He'll help to keep it. I know myself, my paychecks are higher. All my neighbors, my friends' paychecks are higher. I want to see him continue on that. Plus Rick's background with North Korea. He's one of the only people that we know that's actually lived in North Korea. And I think with everything going on over there right now, he could really, really help out with that. So.
Dan, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the evening. Sure. And just to touch on that point that Dan just made, that Rick Saccone did spend some time in North Korea. He did. He was a diplomatic representative there way back in the day under the agreed Freeman Treaty. But he has a very diverse background. He's a four-term Pennsylvania representative. He served in the Air Force. He wrote 9 books. He's done a lot. But what we've noticed here tonight is that a lot of these supporters have known Rick for a really long time. A lot of them have grown up here. Their parents have grown up here. Grandparents have grown up here. So this is a very much family feel here, and they are sticking with Rick Saccone, and we'll see what happens at the end of the night. Back over to you guys.
Yeah, we'll see. That's a great point. Stephanie Ramos over at Saccone headquarters will be back with you as the night goes on. I think we'll be talking a lot about Rick Saccone in the different news environment. We'll see if he's successful or not tonight, but he has gotten a short trip from a lot of national Republicans. I do want to set the stage once again. We're coming live from Cannonsburg, Pennsylvania, here in the heart of Trump territory, southwestern Pennsylvania, a special election for a House seat that has been vacated. All of the buzz has been around the Democratic candidate, Conor Lamb, because this is such a red district, such a red part of the state. A Democrat really has no right to be competitive here at all.
That's right. The previous Congressman Tim Murphy had held this seat since 2002. Donald Trump won it by 20 points, Mitt Romney by 17, John McCain by 11. There's no way that a Democrat should really be viable here, but really tonight, this is really, the race is a toss-up.
So let's show you where we are right now. We are here in the 18th Congressional District in Pennsylvania. As you mentioned, it is currently vacated. It doesn't look like much of anything. Maybe a lowercase r, some people think, yeah, but it's gerrymandered in a really weird way. But essentially, it's carved around to get the most Republican votes as you can into one district. And if you can take a look at the counties, there are only 4 counties inside. If we get the other slide here, only 4 counties that encompass this district. Allegheny County, that's Pittsburgh. So right here, this is the Pittsburgh suburbs. That's where the Democrats live in this district, and we're looking at those numbers because if Conor Lamb's going to win tonight, he's got to run up the score there. Hillary Clinton lost that section of the county, but she only lost it narrowly. She got walloped in the rest of it. Greene County is very rural. That's steel country and coal country down by West Virginia. Not a lot of voters there. But Washington and Westmoreland, those are the 2 places where Conor Lamb has to at least keep it close. Washington County is very Republican. That's essentially the extra. Westmoreland a little bit less so. So really you look for big turnout here in Allegheny County, and we've seen local reports about turnout approaching 30%, which is very high for a special election.
And
a lot of people aren't paying attention.
And Allegheny County was also 43% of the vote last time around. So that's a big chunk that Conor Lamb and Rick Saccone are both going after. But really, Conor Lamb needs the Democrats to turn out there for him.
There's a lot of talk about the blue wave. Democrats who've just gotten off the sidelines and engaged in this race. They haven't had a reason to be energized in this part of the country or a lot of parts of the country in a long time. Our colleague Zachary is catching up with some of them right now, right behind us. He's easy to spot in the crowd right over there.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I was just talking a few minutes ago about the fact that there are Trump supporters here that have pivoted, and they're out here tonight voting for Lamb. I've found one of them, Shannon. Shannon, you said that enough is enough. You're tired of what's going on in Washington. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I'm just looking for change. I'm looking for someone who is true to their word, someone who keeps their tweets censored to everyone of all ages.
And you feel that Lamb does that. He really strikes a chord with you on some particular issues. What are some of those?
I think Lamb's very honest in what he'll bring to our district. I think we didn't see that before with Tim Murphy, and it would be refreshing to have him in the office.
And you know, I've spent the day out here. Haven't spent a whole lot of time. I don't claim to know it inside and out. Can you help me better understand this place that you call home and kind of what's important to the people here?
So my town is actually about an hour away. I'm kind of a Friday football game kind of night kind of town. More out here, I think a lot of rurals and homegrown shops and stuff, but it's just everyone's happy where they're at, and they want to see Conor in Congress. So.
And, you know, I think when we picked up the conversation, you were talking about your particular generation. I asked, and then I followed up by asking, is it usual that you would be at a particular event like this? Is this your first time out, or is this something
this is something new to me. I've followed it since November, though. I've been really involved. A lot of my friends my age, though, this is the first time for them to go to fundraisers or events for something like this. Everyone's just really interested in Conor, he can bring, and the change and honesty that he has.
And remind me again, why the renewed interest? Why is this so important?
I think he just appeals to us, whether it's his views on public health situations or unions, or honestly, I think the biggest thing that people like is that he is young, and it's young blood for everyone. And
you're in public health, is that right?
I am, yes. So I work with a lot of people that tax cuts and Medicare and everything can change their lives as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So as you see here, for some voters, this is about some real hardline policy issues. For other voters, it's about this story, about really resonating with Lamb here tonight. I'm going to toss it back to you guys.
Yeah, so that cheer you heard just around the first numbers came up on the board behind us. Conor Lamb's winning by 41 votes. Doesn't mean anything. Okay,
small
we've only got about
percentage.
1% in. It's really not relevant yet. We're going to be trust us. We're going to bring you the numbers that matter as the night goes on.
It'll be a longer night.
It's going to be a lot longer than that.
Early.
You may hear some cheers. You may hear some boos. They're responding to the numbers they see on the screen. We want to talk right now to Tara Setmeyer, a Republican strategist, a former Capitol Hill Republican aide, who's now an ABC News political contributor. And Tara, I seem to remember you on Nightline a couple weeks ago talking about this very race and talking about how you thought that Conor Lamb was going to pull it off. What's your sense tonight in talking to people and seeing how it's developed?
Well, clearly the momentum is with Conor Lamb and the enthusiasm is with him, because even Republicans are starting to, if you notice some of the commentary coming out of, for example, the Pennsylvania state chairman, GOP chairman, made a comment that this is a Democratic district. It hasn't really been a Democrat district in a long time. About 15 years it's been represented by Republicans. Yes, Democrats out-register Republicans, but they're more of the old-school blue dog Democrats that used to vote for, let's say, Ronald Reagan, and voted for Mitt Romney, and voted for Donald Trump. So it's interesting to me to see that in the last 2 weeks or so, you start to see Republicans trying to measure their expectations for the performance of Rick Saccone, because he's actually been a terrible candidate. The rumor has been that people are very frustrated with the fact that he did not have a strong get-out-the-vote operation. The National Party had to come in, and a lot of outside resources had to come in to rescue Rick Saccone. This should have been a slam dunk for him. We've spoken many times tonight. Many folks have said Donald Trump won this district by 20 points. This should have been a shoo-in. The fact that Conor Lamb is this close and he's winning in many polls within the margin of error in other polls is astonishing, because that swing from the Republican to the Democrat is considerable. And given the demographics of this district, these are the quintessential Trump voters who were Democrats that decided to vote Republican this time, that the Republicans could potentially be losing. That's why the Republicans are paying such close attention to what's going on in this race.
And Tara, you mentioned the resources that the Republican Party has poured into this race, over $10 million to try to help Saccone. They're not going to be able to do this in every race across the country. What are Republicans going to have in their strategy going forward?
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable to see the amount of money spent for a special election in a district that's not even going to exist in a few months from now. This district isn't going to be the same district come November because of the redistricting issue in Pennsylvania. So, for example, about $8.5 million of that $10 million came from Speaker Ryan's Congressional Leadership Fund. He's not going to be able to pour that kind of money into all of these competitive districts. Now, the upside to that is that Republicans have raised a considerable amount of money, and Speaker Ryan's Congressional Leadership Fund, for example, is actually, I believe they have tens of millions of dollars in that fund for things just like this. But they're not going to be able to sustain that. That's why everyone's paying attention to what these results are going to be, so they know where to spread the resources. So many districts are competitive that should not have been competitive, but they are now because of what's gone on with Donald Trump, the chaos that has gone on in the White House. The generic ballot right now still has Republicans down by about 8 percentage points. It's the real clear politics average on the generic congressional ballot as we speak today. That's never a good thing. That means that the enthusiasm is with the Democrats, which is why everyone is looking at a potential blue wave. And the election results tonight are really to set the political narrative. They are spending this money to set the political narrative going into the midterms, because momentum, narrative, those things, they are important because they send a message to other districts, other candidates, and other strategists on how to run their races.
All right, Tara Setmeyer will check back with you throughout the night. And Arlette, it is true that you're not going to see a replay of these circumstances. You're not going to see a district this expensive for the outside groups anywhere in the country.
Oh, no, there's not going to be enough money to be able to play with it come November. But we do know that they wanted to come in here and try to help Saccone. We'll see if that actually is going to have any impact tonight.
All right, we talked a little earlier to the mayor of Braddock, Pennsylvania, about the importance of the labor vote. We have with us one of the local labor leaders, JoJo Burgess, if you could join us up here, grab a headset and join our humble party here. So, JoJo, you're the vice president of a local steelworkers union, and we've been talking a lot tonight already about, got the hat over well done, I like that.
Gotta have
the hat. We talked a lot already tonight about the importance of the union vote, and it goes without saying, this is union country here in Western Pennsylvania. What specifically has this race done to union members to get them off the sidelines differently than in previous elections?
Well, this race is pointing out who's for us and who's against us. We have to mobilize our people to get out and realize that working families and working people's issues are important in this country. Conor Lamb has shown that he's going to stand up for the working people, and that's why a lot of us gravitated to him. We look at those issues and we vote on those issues, and we are active voters. We do have a voice, and we need to maintain our voice and stay off the sidelines, get out, and do what we got to do in order to get people in office that have our best interests at heart.
And President Trump last week announced these new tariffs on aluminum and steel. How much do you think that's going to impact people's votes here? Because you have both candidates who are out there supporting it.
I think that was a good political ploy by President Trump. The steel workers have been trying to push for these tariffs to be signed since early last year. We've had petitions. We've done everything we can to try to get the president to move on these tariffs. It took a special election in order to get him to do what we've been trying to get him to do all along. I think that is something that was a last-ditch effort to hope that Saccone can win this race. I'm hoping that people see through that and understand that this president only did that to help his candidate. But again, we appreciate that he signed them, because guess what? We've been trying since last year to get him to sign these. And in my workplace where we do these petitions at, the Republicans didn't want to sign off on it. But now they're thumping their fist about how, look what President Trump did for us. When we was doing these petitions, you never wanted to be bothered with that. So we'll see how that works out.
Jojo, what do you hope the takeaway is, win or lose, for Conor Lamb? What do Democrats nationwide need to know about what's happening? What do Democrats nationwide need to know about what happened tonight in Pennsylvania? Win or lose for Conor Lamb?
I think that the Democrats nationwide need to realize something that I realized personally in my life. We can't sit on the sideline. I think in 2016, a lot of people were hopeless. Excuse me, I'm going to take a minute.
We hear it. No, this is, every time numbers come up, people cheer.
Yeah. They're good numbers for us, too, by the way. I think that all Democrats, not just all Democrats, all people need to realize that elections have consequences. And sometimes those consequences aren't good for the people that are sitting on the sideline and that are under fire with whoever's in office. I think that President Trump getting elected mobilized and energized that base of Democrats that say, I'm not going to let this happen again. I'm going to make sure that my vote counts. Because a lot of us sat at home because, unfortunately, they didn't want to vote for the candidate that we had going there. But that being said, we're going to be just fine. I think that come 2018 midterm elections in November, I hope we get the same results that we've been seeing across this country, in Alabama and in Virginia and New Jersey, all these places. I pay attention to that because if we mobilize, we can be successful.
Jojo Burgess, thanks for stopping by. I'll let you get back to the party, see where the numbers are at.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As we mentioned, the numbers are just starting to roll in, Arlette. Really too early to draw much significant meaning over it. We're going to be analyzing kind of county by county as the night goes on to try to get a sense of where this is headed. There really isn't enough information out there. Polls have been closed for about 45 minutes.
Right.
And we've seen in many of these special elections, you don't know until it all kind of dumps in at the end. So we promise we'll bring you all that analysis. In the meantime, we want to get a sense of what's going on in the social space. We want you to be using that hashtag #AskABCNews. Bring us your questions. Catherine Falders is in our Washington bureau with the latest. Catherine.
Hey, Rick and Arlette, I have some viewer questions for you here in a sec, so get ready. But I would say that what we're seeing over here in our social media war room, in a sense, is a lot of people on Twitter talking about North Korea. Obviously, these two candidates have a background in the military, and you saw Stephanie Ramos's interview over there with a voter on the ground who said that North Korea was a big issue for him. So we're seeing the same thing really in that social space here, especially given the news North Korea on President Trump's front. But Rick and Arlette, I have a few viewer questions for you that they've been engaging with us. They've been coming in. So I'm going to toss the first one to you guys. Nancy Gonzalez says she's asking who turned out for this election and who didn't in 2016. Any answer for Nancy?
So what we're going to find out in a little bit, Nancy, and I'm trying to duck the question. Here's the thing. If the Democrats are going to win here, a lot of things have to go right. You have to, first of all, turn out your base. Get Democrats excited, back off the sidelines. I talked earlier about the Pittsburgh suburbs that are part of this district. Democrats need to show up again. And we have heard anecdotal reports so far about big turnout among those Democrats. Second thing needs to happen is you need to convince some Trump voters to come over. And that's going to happen in more of the ex-urban counties. We'll be looking at those numbers for that reason. Third thing that, frankly, Conor Lamb wants to happen is that Republicans stay home. They say Rick Saccone, he's okay, or I don't love Trump like I used to, or I don't believe that it's important for me to vote here on a random Tuesday night in the middle of March. All of those things have to happen.
But the Saccone folks definitely want their loyal Republicans and more who may be seeing that Democrats are a little bit more energized this year than others. Republicans are hoping that more will turn out to help them over the edge.
And I'll tell you, though, Catherine, what I've been hearing from Republican sources all day and really for the last week is that they're worried about their turnout numbers. They're worried about engaging people the same way. The president was here on Saturday. That had a big impact on the local media market. He meandered into other storylines, as he is wont to do. But can you keep that momentum going and make people feel like they're as excited as they were a little more than a year ago to vote for Trump right now for a guy that isn't Trump, Rick Saccone?
Right, that's exactly right. And as you know, typically the party that's in the White House loses votes in the midterm elections. But all of that analysis brings me to this next question from Elizabeth, who asks, does it appear that former Trump supporters have turned out to vote for Conor Lamb, or are former Trump supporters doubling down to be loyal? Now, from what we've seen just very preliminarily on social media is we see a lot of those Rick Saccone supporters who voted for him linking their vote to President Trump. But you guys are on the ground there. What are you seeing and hearing?
Well, I think we've heard a mix from people. We definitely hear from some people that say that they voted for Trump and now they're either not voting or they're going to vote for Lamb and give him a shot. But I don't expect that to be the biggest factor. Like, people have to remember, it's not like all the Trump voters are suddenly going to flip loyalties and vote against Trump candidates. More likely that they stay home and that more of the Democrats show up.
And Conor Lamb has really been running to try to appeal to those Trump voters when it comes to reaching out to unions as well as distancing himself from Nancy Pelosi. It's still too early to tell who is coming out from the former Trump supporters, whether they're going to be flipping or not. But the polls might tell us those answers in a few hours.
All right, guys.
Yeah, and
thank
just to
you.
give a quick indication. Yes. Thank you, Catherine.
Go ahead. Okay, thanks. We still have a lot of questions coming in on social media. The hashtag is AskABC News. So Rick and Arlette, we're gonna ask you more questions soon. We still have a flood coming in from our viewers, so we'll chat with you soon.
All right. Thank you, Arlette. Thank you, Catherine. And Arlette, we're going to talk to Zachary Keish, our colleague here, who's working the room right behind us where people are cheering every time they hear any numbers. Zachary, what's the mood?
Yeah, you're absolutely. I'm here with Steve Matt with the Carpenters Union. Good
to see you.
You told me you like the energy out here, right?
Energy's awesome. Haven't seen this in a long time. Labor's really come together, and so has District 18 and what the values for their families and jobs and all those sort of things.
Yeah, I just asked you, and folks want to know, do you think there's voters here that didn't turn out in 2016, and why?
I believe so, but the reason why is Conor Lamb. He's an exciting young candidate. He believes in jobs. He believes in people's Social Security, Medicare, and all the issues that we believe in.
You've been at this for a while, many years, right? Give me a kind of a historical kind of context of this particular district.
It's made up of a lot of union workers, a lot of steel workers, mine workers, carpenters, laborers, boilermakers, all the building trades, a lot of different unions, SEIU, a lot of people.
Now, Lamb has the support of labor. In your opinion, why?
Because he's a fresh young candidate. He believes in. He believes in jobs. He believes in taking care of his family. He believes in Social Security, Medicare. That's all we want at the end of the day, is to be able to take care of our families.
Is that what this boils down to for you?
Sure it does. You have a guy, the opponent, who doesn't believe in that. He's either or supported a prevailing wage bill in Harrisburg that doesn't support us.
We're seeing some new numbers come. Another small victory for Lamb. What's your general sense? I know you have your finger on the pulse of the community, certainly the workers that you're with. What are they saying?
We did a lot of polling with our own membership. We have 1,700 members in the district, and they all believe in Conor Lamb.
All right, great. I really appreciate your time, Steve. Thank you so much. Guys, that's the latest here from the floor. We're going to send it back over to you.
Thanks, Zachary. We're going to bring in now our colleague Tom Yamas, and as he walks over and gets himself, don't let that mess up your hair when you put that. Put it on. It'll be okay.
You have to look like us.
It's good. I should just share the first little tidbits from our analysis desk that, based on the returns we've seen so far, and they're very preliminary, in a couple of percentage points of the vote, we are seeing Conor Lamb outperform Hillary Clinton in the places that he needs to. Now, that is the only way he wins, because Hillary Clinton lost by 20 points, Tom. I know you've been walking around the district a little bit in the last couple of days.
Yeah, it's a good scene. You saw a lot more energy, I felt, on the Conor Lamb side than I saw with the Saccone supporters. We'll see what happens at the end of tonight, but at least that's what I felt, to the point where one Lamb supporter was late last night. I went outside one of his phone bank booths. The snow was coming down, and I said, "You're tired. You just got off work. Why are you phone banking for Conor Lamb at this hour?" And he says, "I'll be honest with you, I hate Donald Trump." And he goes, "I'm not supposed to say that." And I said, why aren't you supposed to say that? He goes, "Because Conor Lamb wants to run a positive campaign. They told us not to say that, but that's why I'm here." He said he thought Pennsylvania made a big mistake back in 2016, and that's why he's out there. And so I asked Conor Lamb today, I said, "Listen, you've had a fast rise. How much do you attribute this to your own success? Do you think people really like you, or do you think they really hate Donald Trump?" And he said, "Listen, I hope they really like me, and we'll see what happens." And he also told me he's not afraid of the word compromise, which, covering the 16 race, especially the Republican primaries, we never heard that word. And he says, "I will work with Republicans. I will reach across the aisle if it's best for our district. We'll see what happens."
And you spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania with President Trump. Do you feel like there's a different type of momentum with Republicans this time around compared to 2016?
I think people still love President Trump here in Pennsylvania, especially in this district. That's why I think it's still very early. I think we could, we'll see what happens. I mean, Republicans have owned this district for 15 years, but we'll see what happens tonight, because a lot of times Trump supporters, as we learned the 2016 race, maybe they're underpolled, maybe they get fired up at the last minute, maybe they'll do something unexpected. We'll see. But I still find a lot of people really do like President Trump here, and Saccone obviously attached himself as much as he could to President Trump, and you saw the reception that President got on Saturday in that sort of kind of wild vintage Donald Trump speech. And I always go back to what Kellyanne Conway said after the election when she was speaking to that group at Harvard. She said the 2016 race was about electricity, not about electability. And I think we can never forget that when it comes to Donald Trump and or the candidates he endorses.
And the question is whether that electricity just dissipates when Trump isn't on the ballot. Rick Saccone isn't anywhere near the superstar that Donald Trump is. He comes in, but does that carry over?
Right, and as far as coverage goes, Rick Saccone has an impressive resume, I mean, worked in North Korea, in the Air Force, state legislature. You haven't heard that at all. You really don't hear those stories. Yeah. It's mostly about Conor Lamb's rise and what President Trump wants, and will this be a slap in the face to the president?
So, Tom, I want to ask you about the segment you did on This Week over the weekend, because it's fascinating, because you've got this congressional district that we're here tonight, this odd shape that we talked about, the lowercase r. It ceases to exist in a couple of months.
Right.
It's getting totally blown up by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. In fact, both candidates tonight live in different districts. They don't even live in this district come January. How is that playing in the fact that this is going to be a rented seat and doesn't even exist as of January of 2019?
It's a great question. I think it's a testament to how important this race is. It's a district where about 250,000 people are registered to vote here, but it's going to completely change, and you can see the models right here, the current districts and the new districts. So really, this win will last till January, but it's only going to matter for a few months, because they're going to have to run again in November, and both men said they will run again in November, win, lose, or draw. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But you're right, this map gets completely rewritten. Critics had said the GOP had gerrymandered the districts, and when you look at some of the districts, even this one, District 18, it looks like a lowercase r. It doesn't really have like a natural sort of, I don't know if you'd say geographical shape. But then you go all the way to Philadelphia, and some of the districts around there look completely crazy. There was one that was nicknamed Goofy Kicking Donald Duck. It doesn't really look like that way to me, but it looks funky. We'll see what happens, because the Republicans are still fighting what the Supreme Court has decided upon. We'll see what happens there. But, the maps do look different. It may not look totally different at first glance, but when you start zeroing in on the counties, they do look really different.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because that new map is much more Democratic friendly. That's the thing, is that whatever happens tonight, Democrats see a road to the majority that runs through Pennsylvania. They can pick up a couple of these seats.
At least 4 districts for sure. 2 by Philadelphia, 2 by Pittsburgh, those Democratic strongholds. The way they're reshaped and recut, they definitely will help out. And they would have helped out Hillary Clinton as well in the state.
All right, Tom Yamas, you staying on it tonight. Great to see you, my friend.
I'm done.
We'll bring you back.
Can I come back?
We'll let you back anytime, my friend.
Can I keep this?
No. You got to keep the. You got to leave the headset.
Thanks, guys.
Additional tidbits from our analysis desk are flowing in as we're seeing there is a narrow lead right now in the raw vote total for Conor Lamb. But most of the vote that's in so far is from the Democratic-heavy parts of the state. He is also outperforming Hillary Clinton in some of the rural parts of the state, down toward the very southwest corner. Those are very small precincts, so we really have to wait for a lot more votes to come in before we're going to know anything solid about this.
But he is going to want, even though that's a small precinct, he is going to want votes from those rural, typically more conservative voters. He's going to want to bring those over to his column.
That's right. We'll bring you all of that as it goes in. Catherine Falders, what's the latest on social?
Well, we're keeping an eye on a lot of those things that are trending on social, and it's kind of in line with what you were seeing on the ground there, Rick and Arlette. So far, the things that are trending are Lamb, 193,000 tweets in Allegheny County. And obviously what's significant about Allegheny County is it's a Democratic county in the southwestern suburbs, includes Pittsburgh, and this is where most of the Democratic votes will come from. So in line with what we're seeing there with you guys on the ground, and of course, PA18 is trending as well, and has been for some time. We're also getting in some more viewer questions here. I know we just talked about a few with you guys before, but I really like this one, Rick and Arlette. This question up here comes from Miss Fisher. and she asks, if Republicans lose, will future candidates rethink having Trump come in and campaign for them? Now, I know we talked a little bit about this with Roy Moore in Alabama, but guys, are you hearing anything there? What's your response to Ms. Fisher on this one? Is it too early to tell?
It might be too early to tell how Republicans are going to react to this, but we do have the White House has said that the president will be out campaigning 4 to 5 times a week after Labor Day. We'll have to see if Republicans rethink that if Rick Saccone does end up losing here. But you also have to remember that with previous presidents, oftentimes during the midterms, the candidates aren't asking them to come out. President Obama was largely invisible when it came to the 2014 midterms. There was only one Senate candidate who wanted to appear with him. He did a lot of fundraising instead. Republicans could end up choosing to go that route. President Trump's actually even holding a fundraiser tonight in Beverly Hills. We'll see if maybe that's something that he tries to do a little bit more of in these midterms.
It does highlight a quirk of this year that Trump is so popular in certain parts, but I don't think we're going to see him out quite as much as he's talking about. All right, Catherine, we're going to catch up with you in a little bit. In the meantime, we're going to hop back over to Rick Saccone headquarters. The numbers are continuing to come in, and I know Stephanie Ramos is working that room.
Hey there, Rick. Yes, we have a young voter here with us, Holden, and tell us, you're with Duquesne University.
Yes.
You voted for Rick Saccone today.
Correct.
You're 19 years old. And tell us a little bit about your background. You're the vice president for your Republican...
Yeah, College Republicans at Duquesne University. Yeah, I'm the vice president of the Duquesne University College Republicans.
Sweet. I'm glad we got that straight. That's a long title. I was not going to remember that. So tell us, what brought you out here? What are some of the issues that you support, that you feel as though Rick Saccone will address if he wins?
Yeah, so I am a member of the township, Elizabeth Township, which we are in right now, and Rick was my state rep, and I got to, see him firsthand when he came and took down Dave Lovdancy, knocked on every door in the township. And he was a real guy that you could believe in, really personal. Even working on the campaign, you meet him every day. He's a guy that knows your first name, you're on a first-name basis with, and can talk to him a lot. But as someone who's a voter, rather than someone who's just helping out in the campaign, I find that it is very, he supports a lot of the economical agenda that the Trump administration represents, the tax cuts and the tariffs and things like that will really bring back jobs and more money in the pockets of, middle-class families, the people who are in our township, the people who are in our district. And I'm very strong when it comes to my beliefs on economics and, the Trump agenda. And I think that Rick Saccone is the best candidate to, fill those goals and with the administration of the Trump administration. And I think that Conor Lamb has just flip-flopped a lot when it comes to, saying he's for tax cuts and then saying he's against tax cuts. Because when it was released, he tweeted that, the tax cuts are only helping, corporations, who are greedy, and they're only really helping, the rich. And that's not true. His dad's actually a lobbyist for PNC, and I kind of thought that was funny because, I'm sure his dad's getting more money in his pocket, sure. But, $1,000 to $2,000, as Nancy Pelosi said it, is kind of funny to me because $1,000 to $2,000 sure helps my parents and myself.
Now, a win for a Democrat would be huge, especially in this area. And what do you think about the steam that Conor Lamb has picked up along the way leading up to today? That's why this race has so much attention. What do you think about that?
I think that, all the power goes to the people who are running his campaign. All the power goes to Conor. I mean, there's respect on both sides of this campaign. We're in an era of politics that's so partisan that, they want to make it seem like we hate them and they hate us. That's not true. Everybody here is very respectful of them. And as a personal voter, I respect what Conor Lamb has done. He's served in the Marine Corps, and he's someone, I'm a Catholic. I look up to, Catholics who are going into public service. And he's kind of reminds people of a Jack Kennedy. I appreciate what he's doing, and I appreciate that he's running. I just think that his record is not as proven as Saccone's, and I think he'd be more of an obstructionist rather than anything. But I commend him, and I commend his campaign for all the work that they have done.
We've definitely seen that here. A lot of respect for Rick Saccone and what he's done over the years. We've spoken to a lot of people that have known him for a number of years, for at least a decade. But if a Democrat were to win in this district, what do you think that means for Washington, and what does that mean about President Trump's political influence in this day and age?
So, as everybody knows, that's why this is getting so much attention. Trump won the district by 20 points. That's the talking point of every news organization. But I don't think this is a referendum on Donald Trump. I think this is a referendum on the candidate of Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, obviously, very different candidates. But I think that Conor Lamb and Hillary Clinton are very different candidates. Conor Lamb is this blue dog Democrat, or at least he's advertising himself as. We will see if he wins tonight, what he does in Washington. But, that he's a very different person. I think this is a referendum on the Democratic Party if he were to win. That this is the candidate that they need to run in the future, someone who has a military pedigree and someone who, is very smart and very personal to voters, because coming from, even though I'm a Republican, I find him to be very charismatic and, like I said before, a lot like Jack Kennedy. And I agree with, I'm sure that a lot of my colleagues and everything like that would agree that he is very smart and he has the military pedigree. So much more of a referendum on Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump.
Holden, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for speaking with us. There you have it, Rick Arlett, team out there, young voter, Republican for Rick Saccone here. Back over to you guys.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. I want to reset the stage about what we're talking about here tonight, because we're here in southwestern Pennsylvania. Again, it's the 18th Congressional District, the special election tonight. It is this southwestern corner of the state. It's kind of a district in search of an identity. It has a lot of different identities, but it only includes 4 counties, as we'll see right here. Westmoreland, Allegheny, Washington, and Greene. So Allegheny, that's Pittsburgh area. That's the Democratic votes. Where you see the Conor Lamb lead so far, our analysis so far is that is where Conor Lamb is racking up votes. Hillary Clinton lost there nationally. Right now, it looks like Conor Lamb is winning there. He's making his marks, at least preliminarily. We're also seeing him do surprisingly well in parts of Washington County. What's not clear yet is what precincts we're talking about, because it could be that these are where the Democrats just happen to live, even a very Republican county. Greene County, very small, very rural, and that's where Rick Saccone is doing quite well. Westmoreland is going to be critical tonight. We just haven't seen a lot of result so far in that state. So again, it is such a diverse district that it's hard to draw a lot of conclusions based on the early results. They can go a lot of different directions.
And really, we're so early on right now, but since Conor Lamb is starting to outperform Hillary Clinton in both Allegheny and in Washington County, that's something that we're going to be looking at going forward to see if those are the Democrats who more Democrats coming out, or if it's going to be Trump voters turning over.
One interesting thing we're seeing right now here in Washington County, again, that's kind of exurbs of Pittsburgh that starts to get into the heart of coal country. That's a district that went 25 points for Trump last time around. So far in the very early returns, we're seeing strong performance by Conor Lamb in some of these places. Not clear. No one I really expects him to win that county, but at least that's where the early numbers are. And if we can zoom back out to the larger map, once again, as we mentioned, this is what it looks like right now. We keep talking tonight about how things are going to change over time. We see the results in Washington County where Conor Lamb has opened up that narrow lead. That is a surprise if that holds. Again, it really depends on where the numbers come in. But I want to focus on that 18th district and what changes under the new redistricting. It goes from that to that.
Looks so different. You go from an R to a block.
A little dot, and that becomes a Pittsburgh district. Now, that is safe Democratic territory. It also happens to not be where Conor Lamb lives.
No, that is actually where Rick Saccone, I believe, wins.
Well, neither candidate actually lives in the district, believe it or not. The whole map's going to get tossed up. And one interesting thing, Arlette, is that all the candidates in the state, whether you're an incumbent member of Congress or a challenger, you have until a week from tonight to decide if you're running for re-election.
Yeah, so the ball drops, the celebration confetti, and then you have to decide where you're going to be running.
I've talked to a number of Republicans who think there could be more retirements yet in that Pennsylvania congressional delegation, maybe depending on what happens with Conor Lamb. There's also a not zero chance that both Lamb and Saccone end up being in Congress next year. Even though they're fighting it out right now, whatever happens in the next 9 months, they could both end up winning in their next their next race.
Lamb and Saccone both say that they intend to be running. Saccone has indicated that he may be running in the new 18th. And then Conor Lamb has indicated he may run in a different district where that might be a little bit more favorable to Democrats.
And it's worth noting, Arlette, as we've talked about the outside money that's come in here, it's not like suddenly the National Democratic Party has become popular. Nancy Pelosi's numbers, according to private polling, are abysmally awful here. She was the focus of all of these campaign ads to the extent that Conor Lamb had to say, look, I don't support Nancy Pelosi. I'm not going to support her for House Speaker. Whatever happens tonight, that's a big issue for Democrats to reckon with. Their national reputation is still in the trash can in places like this.
And Conor Lamb really distanced himself from Nancy Pelosi from the beginning, as Republicans spent millions on ads in this district trying to tie the two of them together. But what's going to be interesting to see is if Conor Lamb does end up winning, are other Democrats going to have to distance themselves from Nancy Pelosi? Are they going to have to say that they wouldn't support her as party leader? But if Conor Lamb does win, he's also going to have a voting record.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see if that's with Nancy Pelosi or not.
And those are great questions to bring right now to Ed Rendell, the former governor of Pennsylvania, Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, from the other side of the state over in Philadelphia. But I know, Governor, you're watching this very, very carefully tonight. What are the lessons that you're drawing based on the early returns and based on the messaging we've heard throughout this campaign that Democrats can take across the state nationwide?
Well, in those 23 districts that Hillary Clinton carries that have Republican incumbents, they're in big trouble. Conor Lamb is winning Allegheny County suburbs, the suburbs of Pittsburgh, by more than he expected. He's in the mid-60s, and that means trouble because those 23 districts that Hillary Clinton carried that have Republican incumbents, those are all just like Allegheny County suburbs. They're Philadelphia suburbs, they're Cleveland suburbs, they're Boston suburbs, and it spells big trouble for those 23 incumbents, number one. And number two, Nancy Pelosi isn't that unpopular in those districts. You're talking about a district in Pennsylvania 18 that's in the heart of Trump country, where the president still has a 51% favorable rating in the Monmouth poll. So that's not an atypical district. It's more of a Trump district, and obviously Nancy Pelosi isn't very popular there. But she's not a burden in those suburban districts, not at all.
Governor, on the Pelosi question, do you think that it is a risk in the marginal districts, the places that you need to win a majority, not just the 20 or so that Hillary Clinton carried, but elsewhere, places like Pennsylvania 18th, if the face of the Democratic Party is Speaker Pelosi, potential Speaker Nancy Pelosi?
No, I think that what Conor Lamb did was he did a perfect job of not letting the Republicans nationalize this campaign. Unlike candidate Ossoff in the Atlanta suburban district, who did let it become a national campaign, Conor Lamb made it about working class values. He made it about steel workers and coal miners. Both unions endorsed him. And he took positions that our progressive wing of our party doesn't necessarily like. But I tell the progressives that Conor Lamb's going to cast one important vote that they're going to love, and that's for the next Speaker of the House, whether it's Nancy Pelosi or Tim Ryan or someone else. Because the Speaker of the House brings bills to the floor. And if the Democrats control the House, we would have had an immigration reform bill. The one that came over from the Senate would have been voted up. All it had to do was go to the floor.
All right, Governor Rendell, thanks for being here. And we're going to talk to you tomorrow on the Powerhouse Politics podcast. John Carl and I look forward to that. Win or lose for your candidate, you're coming on. I appreciate that. Okay, we're gonna check in. I think right now. Well, let's keep it here for a minute before we go back out to the field here. Zach Keish is with us. Okay, Zach, what do you got for us right behind us, just feet away in the crowd? I see a Pirate shirt.
Yeah, just feet away from you guys right now. I mean, if you remember just a couple hours ago, this room was quite empty. It's filling up now. Folks are super excited and really just hanging on to every word, every announcement. I'm here now with Jimmy. I don't know much about your story, Jimmy, but what can you tell me? What do you do for a living?
Well, currently I recently just graduated from college, and I currently have been door knocking for Conor Lamb, trying to get Democrats out to vote for him and unaffiliated voters out to vote for him as well, hopefully so we can flip the House seat.
Well, a young man your age, why is this something that you've undertaken, and what are folks telling you?
Well, I've always had an interest in politics and like making a difference and like making life better for people. So I feel like this is one of the best ways to do that. I mean, in a special election, a lot of people don't really know when it is because of the unusual date. It's not in November. So getting the word out is the best way of getting people out to vote. And high turnout yields the best result.
You know, it's interesting you say that because oftentimes there's a disconnect between young voters like yourself and some of these issues. But you see the importance of this particular race, this particular election?
Yes. Well, even with the districts changing in the next election cycle, it's very important because if Democrats want to get back in power, they need this is kind of a boost to their morale and really helps grow the blue wave in November, and hopefully it works out.
You've been out there, as you mentioned, door knocking. Give me an idea of the demographics, the folks, the issues that seem to resonate most deeply with them.
Well, this district, it's It's a rather old district. It's one of the oldest in the nation, age-wise. It's very, very white. There's a low number of people of color in this district. Democrats have had trouble with getting people white people to vote with their side. But there's been a huge shift in thinking lately, and I'm honestly kind of surprised how well Conor Lamb resonated with these voters in the district.
Did you encounter folks out there that voted for Trump that made the switch here?
Oh yeah, there were many people who voted for.
All right, we'll go back to Zach in a moment as our connectivity resolves itself. So far, we're seeing about a 5,000 vote edge for Conor Lamb, and we're seeing it powered by overperformance over Hillary Clinton in those Pittsburgh suburbs that we've talked about. But the numbers so far haven't been overwhelming enough that he doesn't have to worry. There are lots of votes out there that Rick Saccone can catch up with throughout the rest of the district.
Yeah, there's still going to be a lot of time for us to get these poll numbers in, but we want to see how he's going to be doing in that Allegheny County with the suburbs of Pittsburgh, and then also if he's able to pull over those Trump voters from some of the more rural areas.
Yeah, and we really can't say enough about the 18th Pennsylvania district that this is not a perfect analogy for the nation. This is not where the whole country is. This is Trump country that we're in right now here. It's a special election in the Pennsylvania 18th Congressional District, a surprise vacancy, and this is a race that never should be on anyone's map. The fact that we're here tonight is the news by itself. Right. I think the question, Arlette, to me is whether Democrats got into a position where anything short of a resounding victory ends up being a big disappointment. They've gotten so much invested in this race.
There's really been so much attention poured in here and so much appeal around Conor Lamb running as a different type of Democrat than what the party has really been pitching. But Democrats are looking at this district as a potential way to run in other districts should he win.
And as we said, they were starting to see Rick Saccone make up some ground as the vote total comes in. There's still about 2/3 of the precincts that are still out there. The expected vote total still outstanding. So there's a lot of vote yet to be counted. I am curious, though, Arlette, about the way that this is going to be read nationally. If Conor Lamb wins, he's going to be the second youngest member of the House of Representatives, younger only by 5 days from Elise Stefanik from New York. And he's going to come in with these expectations nationally, but he really doesn't fit the national profile of a Democratic candidate, much less a 33-year-old Democratic candidate in 2018.
Not at all. He has gone out there and distanced himself from Nancy Pelosi, which Republicans have tried to tie him to. He has said that he does not support new gun control measures. He also says that he supports the president's new steel tariffs, which is something you don't hear from many Democrats, but here in this steel country, that is something that is viewed favorably. He's also personally against abortion. So it's really not the typical Democrat that you see. You see him running a little bit more as a moderate or conservative Democrat. It's unclear.
Working with the Republican National Committee, we used